Good evening, everyone. My name is Dawn Hausman once again, and I'm the Director of Consecrated Vocations for the Lansing Diocese. And I'm glad to be here tonight with two Consecrated Virgins live. We have China and Christina, and they're both here to talk to us a little bit about their journeys in this vocation of Consecrated Virginity and just share a little bit about their lives and helping you understand. We're glad to be here, and thank you for tuning in tonight. We have a few through, and yeah, we hope to... Good evening, everyone. My name is Dawn Hausman once again, and I'm the Director of Consecrated... Sorry, I'm sure the YouTube channel works. It works! Yay! Praise the Lord. Anyway, here we are, and I would like to ask Christina to introduce herself and tell us maybe a little bit about her own journey.
Hi, well, my name is Christina Flores. I'm a Consecrated Virgin of the Archdiocese of Santiago in Cuba. I'm 37 years old. I was consecrated 2 years ago in 2012 in Santiago. And it took me quite a long time to discern this vocation. I think I started to feel like the Lord was calling me when I was around 19 years old. And it started off as kind of the idea that the Lord was calling me to be exclusively His and inviting me to an adventure to follow Him more closely. And it was actually a very scary invitation at first, but after a while I got used to the idea, and then it became very exciting and like a romantic idea that the Lord could call me. In my discernment, I wrote away to a lot of secular institutes, third orders, and different types of consecrated lay life, but none of them really seemed to fit me. Then in 2007, I was lucky enough to meet Tina, who's here tonight, and another woman, and I heard their preparation, what they were talking about, and I realized that that was the vocation that I had. But it's quite a difficult vocation to discern because it's not very evident. It's not like consecrated virgins walk around in habits, so they're hard to identify. But when I met these two women, I realized that this is the vocation for me. So I was consecrated in 2012, and that's basically it.
Awesome. China?
Hi, everyone. My name is Carmen Bassano, but everybody calls me China. And I was consecrated 5 years ago. I'm 33 years old, so I was consecrated when I was 28. The most amazing day of my life. Had I thought about that when I was young? Never, absolutely not. It wasn't until my 20s where I just really felt God calling me to more, and I just greatly desired more. I did my first mission trip, and I just kind of realized that my life lived for others would be just a beautiful gift and a way to spend my life. In 2005, I actually went to World Youth Day in Germany, and that's where it just kind of really hit me that I kind of had to put like blinders, and just kind of like see what God was asking of me. If I was able to dedicate time to discerning boyfriends, could I dedicate time to see if God was really calling me? I had a priest friend who worked for the Archdiocese of Washington, and so with the approval of the bishop, we started a discernment house. So it was a house for women who were discerning if God was calling them to consecrated life, but not to a particular order, but just kind of in general, like, is God calling us? And so we had formation in that house, and it was so wonderful to be with other women who were also discerning. And then through that process, I was able to meet a lot of different religious communities, and same thing as Christina was saying, like secular institutes. And when I heard about Consecrated Virginity, it was just like, oh, this is who I am. It was more of a realization of who I was than like a burning desire. It was like, yes, that's who God created me to be. And so I was very fortunate, again, in 2008, August 22nd, 2008, to be consecrated, and it's been so amazing. Every year goes by. I can't believe it's already been 5 years. One of the greatest highlights of my vocation, too, was being able to be at Christina's consecration as well. So it's just a gift that keeps on giving as you see God calling other women to this vocation. So it's been an amazing ride.
Awesome. Thanks, China. And actually, I met China when I was in D.C., and that's how I know her. She was a great friend of mine and good mentor out there while I was there in D.C. So thank you, China. So I would like to ask you ladies, what is this vocation? Can you describe to the people what this vocation is about? And I mean, is this a vocation that you can just like step in, step out of, just a one-time thing, or what?
I can start with that. Consecrated Virginity is actually the first form of female consecrated life in the Church. It dates back to the apostolic age with the women who followed Jesus around. And in the beginning of the Church's life, there were only consecrated virgins. We actually predate all the religious congregations, all the monastic orders. it was a form of consecrated life that was lived in the diocese under the guidance of the bishop, the guidance and the authority of the bishop. And the consecrated virgins were then, as they are now, set aside as sacred persons to be espoused to the Lord Jesus and to be icons of the church, basically. So our central charism is bridal. It's to be the bride of Christ and to be the type of the church. And in that way, our specific responsibilities are to pray for the church and to live out our life of service in the diocese, in the diocesan community, Eucharistic community. It's different than religious life or any other type of institutes of consecrated life because we don't profess vows of chastity, poverty, and obedience. Rather, we're consecrated to a life of virginity. So it's completely irrevocable. We receive a consecration and we're set aside as sacred persons.
Awesome. Tina, did you want to add anything?
Yes, I just wanted to say that I know that for me, part of my discerning of where God was calling me was definitely to be open to all forms of consecrated life. And I was definitely attracted to certain aspects in different communities. But I absolutely knew that God was calling me to consecrated virginity in a particular way. And it wasn't necessarily religious life for many particular reasons, but just particularly the beauty of kind of what Christina was saying of being totally given over to Christ, but especially in the way that He has already created me. So Christina was saying that our main charism is to pray for the church. I even though I greatly love the Missionaries of Charity, I even had an experience with them because I absolutely love them, still do. There's a particular charism that you would be called to if I was called to a particular order. And while I would very much agree with many different charisms, I just kind of felt God saying, well, it's within your own unique way, your gifts, your talents that I have gifted you to the church. So that was definitely one beautiful way that I just kind of felt God was revealing myself to me, if that makes any sense, and just really called to this particular life of consecrated life. And I love, one of the things that greatly attracted me was what Christina was saying, that it's irrevocable, that it's not something that I necessarily profess, like in the vows, it's something that I receive. So just that reception, that openness of the bride to her husband, of just receiving that gift, was definitely something that I felt God particularly calling me to receive as well.
Awesome. Thank you. So I know you touched on a couple things about this question, but what is the difference? I mean, how would you describe the difference between religious life, because many of us know what religious life is. Maybe we don't, so maybe we need to learn a little bit more. But religious life versus consecrated virginity. I mean, how would you describe that difference?
One of the main differences is that religious life, the point of religious life is to set yourself aside from the world and to be a witness to the world that this world is passing by. And religious people do that by professing chastity, poverty, and obedience, right? Whereas consecrated virginity lived in a secular state is in the world. So we're not removed by living in a convent. We're not removed by a vow of poverty or a vow of obedience. We live our vocation within the diocesan community and within the parish community. Our charism is also very diocesan. So we don't have a superior, and we don't have a central charism like Tina was saying. Missionaries of Charity, for example, have charity, or the Dominicans might have preaching, or the Franciscans have poverty. But our central charism is just to be the bride of Jesus Christ, and because of that, we're very, very tied to the church, to the diocesan. That's where our community life, our ecclesiastical life is about. And we have no other charism but to be a type of the church, to be a representation of the church. Our direct superior is the bishop, as opposed to having a superior like another religious would be, or another member of a secular institute. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. And Sheena, did you want to add anything?
I think Christina summed it up beautifully.
Okay. So do you have a way to describe your day in, day out life? I mean, I know it's not ordinary for every consecrated virgin. Can you talk about a little bit, maybe a little bit about consecrated virgins in general, that they might, what they must do in their life for the church, on behalf of the church, as a prayer for the church, and then also what does your day in, day out life look like, and if you can make reference to other people's life that are consecrated virgins.
Sure. Well, if you ever meet a consecrated virgin, obviously the way that they live out their virginity and their consecration is very much attached to what God has specifically gifted them to. So I could explain my daily life, and Christina's will be very different. However, there does need to be a sort of rule of life that you also create, with your bishop, so it's not just I'm making up as it go, or I don't really have these boundaries, and these rules of things that are going to help me set in life. So I think what would be normal for all consecrated virgins, obviously, would be, daily Mass, participation in the Eucharist. I mean, what bride can be without the groom, right? So, daily Mass, set aside time for dedicated prayer. Obviously, that could be in the morning, in the afternoon, depends on the consecrated virgin. And the Liturgy of the Hours, it's literally given to us during the consecration. So the prayer of the church within the Liturgy of the Hours would obviously be something that all consecrated virgins would do. I believe that, for example, me personally, I work fully for the church, like literally, I work for a parish, and I know Christina also works for the church. So whether you are able to be fully employed by, given over fully to the parish, but if that's not a possibility, then definitely, as Christina was saying, it's very diocesan based. So how you volunteer your time or how you actually serve the local church will be an important part of what your daily life looks like. For me personally, my day begins early in the morning, around 6 in the morning, and then I'll always wake up and begin doing the office and morning prayer, and then just set aside time for quiet. Then I usually go to daily Mass, and then if I'm able to have a little bit more time, I'd like to spend time in prayer in front of the Blessed Sacrament. That's, I think, the ideal. And then I work for a parish, so I'm a youth minister and a young adult minister, so I do a lot of work with youth and young adults and a lot of talks and all of that. And then one of the things that I've learned to do is to have kind of breaks throughout the day for prayers. So, the Angelus or the Hour of Mercy, or just these little things that throughout the day keep me in tune with my spouse. And then later on at evening, obviously throughout doing the Liturgy of the Hours, I shouldn't say praying the Liturgy of the Hours really for the church. And then things that I think would also be common to all consecrated virgins would be either a day of retreat, whether that's monthly or weekly, and especially an extended week of retreat throughout the year. So some time set apart for the Lord. And my personal life also involves a lot of missionary work and all of that, and a lot of study. I think it's important to have continual formation as a consecrated virgin and to really be in tune with the church as well.
Yeah, I think exactly what Gina said is pretty much represents the way most of us live the lifestyle. An important thing is that we are secular, so we have to have jobs, and when we're able to work for the church, I think it's a real privilege, because then your full-time professional work is also in the church. But no matter whether you're working for the church or working in some other profession, like being a teacher, being a nurse, or something like that, I think a challenge for all of us is that we don't have like a superior watching us or monitoring how we balance our time. So we have to be secular, but at the same time we have to remember that we're in consecrated life. So trying to keep that balance, like Gina said, requires a lot of personal discipline. And I think most of the consecrated virgins that I know strive to keep that balance by, exactly like Gina said, having time set aside every day that kind of routinizes your life according to prayer. But that's always a challenge for all of us to live a truly secular life in the world, and at the same time a truly consecrated life.
I would just add one more thing, and that I know would be helpful for a lot of consecrated virgins. One of the differences, obviously, between consecrated virginity and religious life is a community life. We don't live necessarily with other consecrated virgins. Not that you can't, but that's usually not the case. So it's important to have that community aspect. So I'm very blessed to have Christina, who lives about an hour away, and then another consecrated virgin who lives a few minutes away. And so we make it a point once a month to meet together, have retreat together, have a meal together, and just kind of hold each other accountable. I mean, yes, we obviously have our rule of life, how we're living our life, but just to have people that are constantly encouraging. So I'm very fortunate to have these consecrated virgins near me, but if you don't, it'd be very important, I think, to to try to find that aspect of community, to really be inserted and not be isolated. I think that's an important aspect as well.
And then another important aspect is your integration in the life of the diocese. So it's highly recommended that every consecrated virgin meet with her bishop at least once a year, or once or twice a year, just to check in with him and to make sure that the bishop knows what you're doing in your diocese, how your service is being exercised, how you're living out the spirit of poverty, how you're living out a spirit of austerity in your lifetime. And then for most of us, I mean, some of us are lucky enough that we get to see our bishop often if we work in the diocese or have a lot of access to him, but otherwise your integration very often is going to be through the parish. So to make sure that you're well integrated into parish life and are able to give service through the parish and through the diocese is an important aspect.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, I've heard people tell me, you know, I don't know how people can live on their own and not, you know, have a whole community of religious supporting you in your consecrated life. And I'm like, you know, it's a grace. God gives you that grace, right? I mean, not that you don't need community, but it does take different forms. So to be open to the form that God has for you.
That God always gives you the grace that's necessary for your own vocation. So if he's calling you to this state of consecrated life, to consecrated virginity, then he'll give you the graces that are necessary for living a life which other people might think is kind of isolated, but honestly for me, this is perfect for me. I mean, I think for me it would be much more difficult to live in a convent in a community. So God makes you, he hardwires you for the call he's going to give you.
Yeah, praise the Lord for that, right? Okay, so would like to mention, people want to know what you wear. I mean, do you have to wear anything specific? Do you get to choose? What's up with that?
One of the interesting things that Christina was saying about that also makes this vocation difficult to discern is because it's not necessarily all that visible. We don't have, you know, a particular way of all the consecrated virgins dressing. So that's an important aspect, but I do think that's something that is common to everybody, since it is a call to consecrated virginity, you know, this aspect of femininity, this aspect of modesty in your dress. I personally also think that there has to be a sort of simplicity, you know, because you are married to Christ, and so, yes, you know, you can choose what you wear, but I also think that in the back of your mind, you know, you don't want to be influenced by vanity, you know what I mean, or just spending all these amounts of money, because like your children is the church and the poor, so always kind of having that in mind. So again, simplicity, appropriate also to your workplace and to your surrounding, to the diocese within you live. There's some dioceses that may have more regulations for how consecrated virgins should look. But like I said, just particularly, you know, within your, because I actually work for the church, but there might be other people who actually work, you know, maybe lawyers or maybe teachers, so appropriate dressing, you know, professionally. But just again, that femininity, that modesty, and that kind of simplicity and beauty that's kind of interior, so it's kind of letting God shine through. You're not looking for a future mate, you're not looking for anybody, you know, but you do still want to be beautiful for him.
Yeah. A lot of, like Sheena said, some dioceses have regulations of how the consecrated virgins should dress and what they should wear. Personally, in my diocese, I'm the only dress code other than what I wear. Consecrated virgins actually wear a veil because we get our veil imposed during the liturgy of consecration. Not many wear it all the time. A few in the world do, but most of them don't wear it all the time. But many of us wear our veil for liturgy, so for Mass or for adoration or for processions and things like that.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point. Also, we are given 3 things during the consecration. We're given the liturgy of the hours. We're given the veil. Like, it's interesting because in marriage, you know, it's almost like the man kind of a bit removes a veil, but here it's given to us. And then also a wedding ring. So, you know, that is, yeah, Christina has her too. And so just a beautiful wedding ring, you know, again, it's just a sign that is given to us. So that everybody has in common. Obviously, it's not the same wedding ring for everybody. And that's what makes this vocation beautiful. People who always ask me, like, oh, are you married? And I'm like, yes, but do you have 5 minutes for me to explain what that means? But just the beauty of this vocation, again, it's a very personal vocation, but for the church, not personal, and in the sense that, oh, it's all about, and that God will gift you gifts that he then wants poured out towards the parish and the diocesan community as well.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It kind of reminds me of a married couple who you can't just say, okay, this is how you live married life. Like each married couple is going to live out their marriage different, and it seems that consecrated virginity takes this form. One is not the same as the other, and that's beautiful. Another question. What is like the ceremony about? What does this look like? Is there a ceremony? And you might want to show us any picture of that ceremony.
Tina, do you want to show yours?
Sure. One of the beautiful things that once I had discerned and I was kind of preparing for my consecration, along with my formation, one of the things was to really read. There's a little rite for what the rite of consecrated virgins should be like, and so it was just really beautiful. And I use this a lot because like I work with teens, and I always show them, because I wore a wedding dress because it literally is my wedding day, and just the beauty of that, to be able to be within the parish community as a bride, and then it's presided by the bishop. I'm sure Christina will give a lot more detailed information on it. Sorry, I'm trying to look for the best picture. But one of the beautiful things is, so this is just a little bit, I don't know if you could see it, but that's me in my wedding dress the day of my consecration. And just the beauty of that as well. And one of the beautiful things is I get emotional, it's just so beautiful. Actually, when we prostrate ourselves and they're doing, the litany of the saints, and I remember at another friend's consecration, you could see her body like this. She was like crying during that time, and I just remember so much peace during mine because I was just thinking, yes, I want to be a saint, and thank you, God, for giving me this opportunity. So this is part of the prostration, and then it's not only that, but the entire church. That's my bishop there as well. Kneeling and just praying for you. The beauty of that moment is incredible. And then there comes a moment of the propositum, which is actually like this promise that you make, and you make it. It's beautiful. It looks like the diaconate in a sense, where you actually place your hands within the hands of the bishop, and then you say your purpose of really remaining in a state of virginity. And then the beautiful thing is that you remain kneeling, and the bishop has the most beautiful prayer of consecration. And so just that receptiveness. This is me during that moment. Just the receptiveness of that, just hearing the words that I had meditated on for so long, and then just hearing them and seeing how God was preparing me to fully receive that consecration. After that consecration, that's the moment you're literally consecrated, and then comes when you receive the veil. I don't know if you could see it all that much there, but you see the veil, the liturgy of the hours, and then the ring. The beauty of that moment, and then you're basically presented to community, and it's just so beautiful because it'll say receive the veil as a sign of your consecration, and then receiving the ring, as a sign of your espousal to Christ, and then the liturgy of the hours is a sign of prayer for the church. So it's like receive, it's so beautiful. It's just people are like, I can't believe you did that, like you're so courageous, and I'm like, courageous? No, I was just kind of receptive, and God was showering me with gifts, and then after those moments, after receiving the consecration and then all these the different signs, the Mass continues as usual. So, will be the liturgy of the Eucharist, and then it was just amazing, really, to be. And again, it's within the diocesan community. Usually, it's done within the cathedral. Again, just a sign of the diocesan aspect of this vocation. So it's just an absolutely beautiful, beautiful ceremony. And my friend was consecrated before I was, and I just remember crying so much during consecration. I couldn't get over how beautiful it was. And then I had peace in mind. And then with Christina's, I was just elated. So it's just so beautiful. I hope that when you hear that there's a consecrated woman within your diocese being consecrated, don't worry about it. I don't know her. Like, this is a gift for the diocese. It's a gift for the church. So go and be a part of that beautiful ceremony.
Yeah, could just saying a little bit. The rite of consecration is one of the oldest rites in the church. The rite that we use today actually dates back to the 7th century. It looks like a cross between an ordination rite and a wedding. It's got aspects of both ordination and wedding, and again, it's a very diocesan event. So usually, like Tina said, the bishop is the one. Actually, the bishop has to celebrate a consecration of a virgin. It's only permissible that the bishop consecrate a woman, consecrate a virgin. So it's always celebrated by a bishop, and usually it'll be in the cathedral with the entire presbytery of the diocese present. Because it's a very, very solemn rite. It's you can tell how solemn it is by how long it is, in the sense it has a lot of parts. The parts besides you have your first you have a scrutiny where the bishop asks you whether it's your intention to preserve virginity for the rest of your life, and whether you can be a manifest sign of the kingdom, and whether you can be a joyful witness to the Lord. And then you make your propositum, like Tina was saying, so you promise to live a life of virginity, and then there's the prostration. You have this photograph here of mine. So it's similar to an ordination where there's the prostration. And then finally, the Litany of the Saints is being sung right now during the prostration. And then finally, you have the moment of consecration itself, which is when the bishop prays the consecration prayer over you. And again, the whole theology of the rite of consecration is that it's passive. You receive the consecration. You're set aside as a sacred person. So the center of the rite is not a vow at all. The center of the rite is the consecration that the bishop bestows on the woman, on the virgin. So it's a very beautiful. If there's one in the diocese, you should go to it. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you both. And I just thought of a question off the top of my head that we didn't prepare for, but I would love to have you answer. So since you've been consecrated virgins, how do you see your life as a mother? Because, I mean, the world thinks that you let go of motherhood, or, sometimes you get the questions of, well, can you adopt children? I mean, what is your life of motherhood? Because clearly you live it.
I think it also begins especially through prayer. We're given the Liturgy of the Hours, and so that aspect of the mother that is always looking after the needs of her children. So a particular way that comes through prayer, because we know that God's the one that will actually bring forth the fruit. So in a particular way, prayer. And I also believe within your own charism, within your own gift back to the church. For myself, particularly, I'm a youth minister and a young adult ministry, so my sister kids around, she's like, well, when my kids are a teenager, I'm just going to give them to you. Just the opportunity of caring for these teens, of really pouring yourself out. You receive the gift of consecration, but when I was in formation, it was really interesting because the priest told me a chalice is consecrated, and you can't use anything else. It's consecrated for the blood of Christ, but it's not consecrated to be isolated, but to be used and pour it out. And so kind of that notion of, yes, you've been consecrated, you receive this great gift, but it's not for you. It's for the gift of the church. So like I said, it'll look different for everybody. For me, obviously for everybody it will be prayer, but then within my own personal life, I know it's definitely within the work that God has given me. So for me, that means the teens, and then people that I meet. It's just, you don't turn it off. Just like a mother is always a mother. It's not something you turn off that you left your ministry or your work or whatever it is, and then it's like, okay, it's me time. There is no me time. It's time for God, always, always. And so within the parish community, you always find people who are needy. You always find people who need prayer, or just as a good mother, like you're looking out ahead for the needs of others. So it isn't fake or false or romantic to say, oh, we're spiritual mothers. Like, it needs to be a reality. And I would just say, if it's not, then there's something off that you need to discern about, like why is the fruits of motherhood not being poured out? But it's essential, yes.
Yeah, like all consecrated life has to be fruitful. It's never consecration for oneself, just so that you can kind of bask in your own consecration. And we are types of the church, right? We're models of the church. We're icons of the church. And the church herself is both bride and mother. So there's those two aspects of it. And the Virgin Mary herself is virgin and mother. So in the fullness of womanhood, those two aspects always have to be expressed. And I guess biological motherhood is one aspect, one way to express motherhood, and the vocation of motherhood. But there's also spiritual motherhood, which the church expresses, the Virgin Mary expresses. So it's intrinsic to every woman, not just to biological mothers.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it's almost like you can be opened up to the grace of a new motherhood by the sacrifice of the biological motherhood. It's really kind of a beautiful thing that God does. Okay, so just a couple last questions. So for someone who's discerning this vocation, what do you think would be a few signs or things that they should pay attention to if they could possibly have a call? What do you think the signs of this calling would be?
I know that in my own personal case, I wasn't discerning at all when I was young at all. But there was a definite attraction to purity, to virginity, to love. Just always, just innate. I remember my friends throughout high school, they would describe things that they would be doing, or just even casually saying, well, if I'm a virgin by the time I get married, I'd be like, of course. Like, just a beautiful acknowledgement of the gift of purity was also very important for me. But that, I think, could be open to, all vocations. But I know that the more I began to discern, we talked about before about the different gifts that God has given. So I knew that for me, community life would not have been life-giving. And not that it wouldn't be, everybody needs community, but there were particular aspects that I knew just weren't life-giving for me, which I knew for other people was. So that was a particular call. And I knew for myself as well that even though I could see the Missionaries of Charity or other different orders or even secular institutes that were kind of defined by a specific charism, I just kind of felt that God had complete freedom in my life to use rather than just, in a particular way. God could use just that freedom of letting God use me completely. So that's and I think for me also just that attraction to the early virgin martyrs, to the idea of, it's gonna sound strange, but like martyrdom, like it's not like full gift of virginity for the world. Like that was very, very attractive to me. And the fact of being in the world, like the very fact I do youth ministry, I do mission work. It doesn't mean that I don't have a contemplative aspect of myself that I've always desired, but that very aspect of being in and being a leaven within was definitely another way, particularly that I felt that were kind of hints and signs throughout as well.
Yeah, I could second all those. One important one is that you have a sense that God protects your virginity and protects your purity throughout your life so that you're able to get to the age of consecration with that gift. The other aspect, too, is that I think a lot of people look at our lifestyle and think, oh, my God, what a sacrifice, or like how arduous. But in my own experience is that I don't ever think of it as a sacrifice. To me, it was always like such a beautiful, adventurous, romantic invitation that it almost became like, how could I turn that down? If I turned it down, it would be to my own sadness, So it's there's always, in every vocation, there's always kind of a fascination, attraction that makes you want the vocation. It's not like you're forcing yourself to do this because you think it's just a sacrifice, and rather it's like a joyful acceptance of an adventure and a romance with the Lord, and that kind of manifests itself in a realization, a knowledge that God calls you to be exclusively His. And when you have that call and you know it, you come to know it through almost a sixth sense. It's knowledge, but it doesn't necessarily come through the senses. It doesn't necessarily come through your hearing or your seeing and reading. But it's the knowledge that God calls you exclusively to be His own, and you want that also. In terms of just practical stuff, the aspect of living in the world has to be part of it, something that you want, that you feel comfortable with, that you're not going to be taken out of the world with a habit or a convent or a community around you, that you're going to be very integrated. And I think another very important aspect is that you really feel very fulfilled in diocesan life. That working in a parish or working in the diocese is very kind of all-encompassing for you. So I think those are which in essence are the basic leitmotifs of this vocation. Virginity, exclusive love for the Lord, living in a diocese, and living in the world.
Would you also say a little bit of, I shouldn't say a little bit, probably a lot of solitude, that love life with the Lord?
That's something that always has to be protected. That's something that always has to be protected, and sometimes it's a challenge, because when you're in the world, you get overwhelmed with the world sometimes, even when they're good things, even when it's youth ministry or work in the diocese, but you always have to protect the time with your spouse. I always make the comparison that we're married women, right? We're married women that have responsibilities. So you have to take care of your responsibilities, and you also have to take care of your husband.
Nice. Thank you. Okay, well, any last couple thoughts? I was thinking of resources for people discerning. Maybe you could share a few of those with the viewers.
Sure. I even made a little sticky note because I lent the book away, but Theology of the Body was really important for me. Just the understanding of my femininity, my understanding of what a self-gift is, like total donation. So if you haven't read John Paul II's Theology of the Body, please do. It's great. Another great book that we've read also is by Father Thomas Dubé. It's called And You Are Christ, and it's the charism of virginity and the celibate life. It's not necessary. He talks about consecrated virgins, but he means it in a sense of like women who are consecrated towards virginity, not necessarily our vocation, but it is a beautiful book about virginity, about that gift. Very early on, I began to read The Christian State in Life. That was a very great, influential book on me, just to understand like different vocations. And then I'm not sure if this is, sorry, but I'm not sure if this is in English, but this was really great. The Spanish Conference of Bishops actually came out with, when in 2008, when Pope Benedict had the Congress of Consecrated Virgins, they came out with all of the talks and everything that was there. So just really seeing what other forums, or especially on a universal church level, of what they describe and decide and say about consecrated virginity. For me, also very important was, the fathers of the church. It's just beautiful to read of, St. Ambrose, about his sister St. Marcelina, consecrated virgins, and just the beginning of like early church fathers talking about that. There's a million others, I'm sure, that I'm forgetting, but these resources are very good. And an important resource are other consecrated virgins. I know that has always been crucial. For me, it was a consecrated virgin named Maria Lisa. I know that Christina, that it was us, and there's always just really getting to know this vocation from within as well as important.
Yeah, I would totally agree with that. For me, two of the most influential books I can recommend are, you can see the spine here, it's Klimich, The One Bride by Klimich. One Bride. It's a book in English. It's actually maybe about 40 or 50 years old, but it's beautiful, and it really gets to the heart of the vocation. And then I'm a canon lawyer, so I love canonical liturgical texts. And there's one author who's one of the preeminent authors on consecrated virginity. His name is René Metz. You see it there, René Metz. He writes in French, but his work has been translated into Spanish and English, at least some of them. So René Metz was very important. But more important than any book was meeting other consecrated virgins, yeah.
And consecrated virgins can also form associations, and one of the resources that you could certainly check out is consecratedvirgins.org, where they have lots of the early church fathers on there and other things. So certainly check out that website. And also, I'm also a resource for the Diocese of Lansing as the Director of Consecrated Vocations. If people want to talk about their journey or just ask a little more tips and discernment or understanding of something, you're certainly welcome to call me, email me. And there's another vocation director in the diocese, Father John Linden. We're here available for you as well.
So I think another thing I'd like to add is sometimes people ask, oh, if I think I have this vocation and I'm ready to do something about it, then what should I do? Especially if they're not in the Lansing diocese. Usually you would contact your bishop, probably through the Office of Consecrated Life. And some dioceses that already have consecrated virgins might have a program set up of formation. And other dioceses, if they've never had a consecrated virgin, they might not have a lot of information, so you might be in the position of having to supply it. At this point, there's no kind of universal plan of formation. It's not like all consecrated virgins have a 2-year formation and a novitiate or something like that. It depends a lot on what your bishop establishes for his diocese, because it's a diocesan vocation. And it depends a lot, too, on the woman herself. Like, what previous formation do you have? How old are you? What's your profession? What do you intend to do, once you're consecrated? So it's pretty, I want to say, tailored to both the woman and to the diocese. But anyway, the first step would normally be to contact your bishop. And usually, unless you know your bishop, you'll probably end up contacting the director of vocations at your diocese.
Great. Well, thank you, and that's beautiful. Any final thoughts that you want to say to the people viewing out there about this vocation or about their walk with the Lord?
Sure. I would just say that and I know Christina would say the same thing, that prayer is essential. You can't discern what God wants if you don't spend time with him. He will make it clear, but unless you open yourself to that time, and especially within this vocation where that's going to be so crucial, please pray. So pray, because God has a will for everybody here, obviously, so pray to see what it is. And then in a particular way, pray for us. Pray for us who are living this life of consecrated virginity. We pray for you continuously throughout the Liturgy of the Hours, but please remember us and keep us in your prayers as well.
And I guess I would say also, if you think you have a vocation, don't be afraid, because if God calls you, he also gives you the courage and the joy to move forward. So if you have a vocation, and he'll make it known to you, and he'll also make you capable of accepting.
Beautiful. Thank you, Christina and Gina. Yes, don't be afraid. JP2 behind me in this picture here, you can see he said that a lot. Well, and so did the Lord. So we say, don't be afraid, all of us. It's a scary journey sometimes, but it's glory at the end, and it's beautiful. If the Lord nudges your heart, don't block that out. Don't squash that away. He wants to speak to you. So we're glad you joined us tonight, and thank you for this time. And I thank these two women for the beauty of living the beautiful vocation of consecrated virginity and sharing with the world that there is a heaven, there is a God, and he's worth surrendering their whole life for to serve as brides and as spiritual mothers. So we thank you, and we say God bless all of you in your journey of God's will. Thank you. Good night.